start.
Oh, great. Do you want to have a conversation, or do you want to do it your own?
I'll do the presentation. It'll be a conversation, but it'll be good. It'll be yes.
Bueno, pues.
Can we get everyone to move to the front? I don't know why it's so spaced out.
Bueno, los que estáis al fondo, si os queréis poner pues un poquillo más aquí, ayuda pues a que se escuche mejor.
I don't bite, I promise.
No muerde. Aquí traducción simultánea. Vale, pues bienvenidos a este siguiente panel de la tarde, de esta segunda jornada del Liberty First, de Students for Liberty, aquí en la UFM, la Casa de la Libertad. Hoy contamos con Reem Ibrahim, ¿lo he dicho bien? Did I say it okay?
Yes,
Reem Ibrahim, vale. Ella es oficial de comunicaciones, communications, ¿no? el Institute of Economic Affairs, que es una gran institución hiper reconocida pues, en el mundo de las ideas de la libertad. Ella, pero también aparece pues, asiduamente, regularmente, en televisión, en radio, en la BBC, en LBC, en Great Britain News, que es un gran medio de Reino Unido, también en TalkTV, y además ha sido publicada en The Telegraph, que es un medio también que conocemos todos. Antes de convertirse en la oficial de comunicaciones, Reem fue pasante en la AIE, ¿verdad? Y trabajó pues, varios años pues, en departamentos de investigación, de comunicación. Digamos que es una persona bastante top aquí. Y bueno, a Reem le interesan pues, temas de política, de actualidad, de educación, política educativa. Y bueno, también tiene interés por algo pues, bastante específico, que es la reducción del daño que hace el tabaco, ¿verdad? Y la política fiscal. Es graduada en Economía, en Ciencias Políticas por la Universidad de Londres y bueno, está con nosotros aquí. Así que sin más dilación, welcome, Reem.
Hello, hola. I didn't understand a word of that. He could have been saying horrible things and I wouldn't have known. My Spanish extends to about hola, quiero beber un vino. That's about it. But hello everyone. I hope you've all been enjoying the conference so far. I don't know if the slides are going to be on, but today I'm going to be talking to you all about the morality of capitalism. And I'm going to stand because I feel weird sitting when I'm talking. So obviously, whenever we talk about the morality of free markets, the morality of capitalism, or whenever generally in the liberty movement we talk about freedom and we talk about the importance of economic liberty, we tend to talk about the consequentialist arguments. We tend to always say, well, you know, I love capitalism because millions of people have been lifted out of poverty, because it's allowed us to develop as a nation, as a globe, as the world. We've been able to develop economically as well. I love capitalism because I've got a snazzy new iPhone, the iPhone 15, love it. We tend to talk about capitalism in this way because of these consequentialist arguments. Now, what also tends to happen is that when we are trying to make these arguments against the socialists or the leftists, they tend to have this monopoly on compassion. They tend to tell you that socialism is it's nice in theory, but doesn't work in practice. Well, I'm here to explain to you why capitalism is the most moral system and why socialism is not only immoral in practice, but also immoral in theory. And that is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. Is the presentation going to work? I can talk to a black screen, that's fine.
Let's go ahead.
All right, cool. So, there tends to be three primary criticisms of capitalism. We hear from, generally speaking, most of those sort of economists that we see here on the left, famously Karl Marx. The first one I want to talk about is this idea that capitalism causes exploitation. that the masses are exploited, that, you know, these people are being oppressed, the proletariat are oppressed as a result of a capitalist system. This idea that it makes the poor poorer. We're also told that capitalism causes people to be selfish. Do I have any Ayn Rand fans in the room? Any Ayn Rand fans? Yes, okay. So you guys, hey, the camera guy's also an Ayn Rand fan. So we get to be told, and I'm sure that many of you that have read anything of Ayn Rand will be opposed to this kind of perspective, but we're also told that capitalism causes people to behave in selfish ways. And we're also told that capitalism causes instability, that there are all these unstable economic crises that cause various types of instability as a result of, do you want to go to the second? Yes, thank you. The second side, yeah, so capitalism causes all these horrible things. Now, I can tell you all about why those three particular reasons are incorrect, and you can kind of break those down within a couple of sentences. So the first one, capitalism causes exploitation. Well, you know, it might be that some of the most pernicious of all of these kind of misunderstandings that we encounter regarding markets. So this idea that, you know, absent market capitalism would create a greater shared wealth and that people wouldn't be exploited tends to be repeated to multiple people as well. And, you know, as we know, in The Wealth of Nations with Adam Smith, he explained that markets, you know, continuously expand the range of goods and services to ever-increasing numbers of people. And that's why we've seen the unprecedented expansion of welfare and also of wealth amongst individuals across the world. And it really has been unprecedented, and primarily as a result of this mutual exchange. Now, people like Karl Marx and Frederick Engels most famously argued that their assault on capitalism was primarily about this kind of class tension, this class warfare. And it's not surprising that these kind of ideas and these arguments then filter down into very basic level stuff about how socialism is ideal and that capitalism exploits people as well. But we've got to remember that all developed countries have effectively market-based economies. If you look at countries across the world that have, again, even post-colonial countries like Singapore, that is now pretty much wealthier than their colonizer, the United Kingdom. So it's really interesting the way in which markets have been able to provide this unprecedented source of wealth, and yet these arguments against the free market still tend to filter down. This second argument, capitalism causes people to be selfish. So the economic historian Deirdre McCloskey has also noted that people at all times throughout history have attempted to amass capital, so land, resources and money. And those collective attempts didn't lead to the type of society-wide economic growth that we've had since the 1800s. We've never seen this kind of unprecedented levels of growth. And the underlying foundation of capitalism is human freedom. It's about, you know, individuals being permitted to freely exchange with one another. And it means that people have been amazingly good at finding better ways, more efficient ways to do different things and to create different things. And I mean, equally as important, the economist Joseph Schumpeter also explained that out of this freedom arises this kind of process of improvement. So again, as different firms, different companies, different individuals continuously create different things and innovate, they're able to do those things as a result of the free market, as a result of that freedom. And the third argument, instability. This idea that, you know, we know about 2008. 2008 was a financial crash caused by the end of capitalism. Do you ever hear the term late stage capitalism? But actually, I mean, looking at the majority of those types of crises, they occurred as a result of government intervention, as a result of the expansion of the money supply, as a result of unprecedented levels of inflation, as a result of governments and central banks acting in those ways. And so I think it's important that we address these arguments head on. But this doesn't really tell us, I mean, just sort of breaking down those arguments, doesn't really tell us why capitalism is moral. It tells us that, okay, the criticisms of capitalism might not be as well-founded in those arguments as we might think, but it doesn't tell us why it's moral. And So that's what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this. Should we go to the next slide? So, have you ever been in love? Hands up, who's been in love? Yes, of course I'm in Spain. Everyone here is so passionate and loving. So you can love a person, you can love an object, you can love an idea, you can love a thing, you can love a product, you can love so many different things. I love wine, as you all know, but you can love many, many different things in this wonderful world as well. And, you know, love is particularly crazy. It kind of drives you to be a little bit crazy. Love makes you behave in particular ways. You might stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning texting that person that you love, just hoping that you can build something with them. You might, as I often do, spend, you know, until 2 or 3 in the morning thinking about a lovely glass of Rioja. And you also might think about the ways in which you talk about ideas, and you might love this idea of this product. Now, I think, thank you. I think that when we're looking at throughout history and the way in which literature presents this idea of love, it tends to talk about it in this all-encompassing, all-consuming way. Now, of course, I'm British. I have to introduce a little bit of Shakespeare into the room. So Duke Orsino is a character in my favourite Shakespeare play, Twelfth Night. And he talks about that. This is a very famous line. If music be the food of love, play on. This idea that love is all-consuming, and it really is what drives us as individuals. This pursuit of happiness and this pursuit of something slightly more fulfilling in our lives, in our world. And I think that love is this driving force behind entrepreneurship. Now, let me explain. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be absolutely barking mad. You have to absolutely love what you do. Now, it would be a pretty stupid way to just make money. The majority of businesses fail. This is the US's Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it found that in the first 2 years of being open, 45% fail, 65% fail during the first 10 years, and only 25% of new businesses actually make it to the 15-year mark. So you lose out on time, on energy, on money, on so many different things as a result of creating this business, and yet millions of people across the world do it every single day. And it's the love of an idea that drives people, the idea that something doesn't yet exist in this world, and you have the opportunity to create that thing. That is what drives entrepreneurship. And that, in my view, is effectively a type of love. It's a love of an idea of something that doesn't yet exist. And, you know, you might not be able to stop thinking about it until 4 or 5 in the morning. You might think about it at 2 in the morning. You might, you know, not be able to get to sleep just because you've got this incredible idea about something that could exist in the world that doesn't yet exist, that you have the opportunity to create. And all of a sudden, you are consumed by this idea. You're willing to make massive sacrifices, your time, your money, your reputation, to create something that you love. And Ayn Rand, we've got the Ayn Rand fans here, said that to love is to value. And I think that entrepreneurs see a potential value and they love it. And so that's why they create those things, and that's why they take all of those risks as well. Now, there are countless examples of rags to riches entrepreneurs that have been able to be incredibly successful as a result of their entrepreneurial endeavours. We've got John DeJoria, who is entirely self-made. He's most well known as the founder of Paul Mitchell Hair Care. I love Paul Mitchell Hair Care, it's great. But you know, in his early life, he was not characterised by this kind of success. He started his career as a truck driver, as a janitor, and he even sold Christmas cards door to door, and he was actually fired from his first hairdressing job. But despite all of those different hurdles that he had to face, he still tried and he still entered into this world of entrepreneurship. And he founded John Paul Mitchell Systems with the hairdresser Paul Mitchell, and now he's worth over $3.1 billion. Now, again, not necessarily all about the money, although I'm sure we all would love a sweet $3.1 billion. But his thoughts on success is that the biggest hurdle is always rejection, and that any business that you start, you have to be ready for it. There is a difference between successful and unsuccessful people, and I'll quote him on this, that successful people do all of the things that unsuccessful people don't do. So it seems pretty simple, but when you think about it more deeply, I think it's really interesting. It's all about those different actions that we do as individuals. He says that when 10 doors are slammed in your face, you've got to go out to door number 11 enthusiastically with a smile on your face and actually say, I'm going out there, I'm going to do this thing. And the thing that drives you to do that is this love of this idea. Howard Schultz, he is a Starbucks founder. I love a good Starbucks iced coffee. And, he, I think, is synonymous with some of the most incredible levels of entrepreneurial success. So, again, when he started, he was the first person in his family to go to university. It was whilst working for a coffee company that he actually came across the Starbucks brand. And, he continuously had doors slammed in his face and continuously tried his very, very best to get to where he is today. And he said that his experiences had led him to develop this kind of philosophical approach to life. He said, I believe life is a series of near misses. He said that a lot of what we ascribe to luck is not luck at all, that it is seizing the day and accepting responsibility for your future. It's seeing what other people don't see and pursuing your vision. Again, very sort of Randian in his perspective on the way in which he's been able to achieve his success. And it really is about taking that personal responsibility. And again, I'm not going to go into too much depth, but everyone knows about Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, Apple computers. They were in his garage creating these different products. And I mean, how many of you guys have an iPhone? Yes, iPhones are great. I think they're brilliant. And, these entrepreneurs, I think, are sort of encompass this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And he also said that, sometimes life is going to hit you in the head with a brick and that you shouldn't lose faith, which I think is a very good motto as well. Now, in a free market system, you are rewarded for creating something that other people want. You can't just open up a business for yourself unless you've got enough money to sustain that. Business making, business models, the entrepreneurial spirit, this all comes as a result of people creating things that other people want. And if they want it enough, your business will sustain itself. So it is in our self-interest, as Adam Smith said, to cooperate with one another and to trade with one another. In a market economy, for an entrepreneur to be successful, they have to create something that other people will want. And I think that love is this driving force behind entrepreneurship. Of course, most new businesses fail. And yet it's this love, this drive, this hope that drives individuals to create these wonderful things and contribute to the advancement of the world. And I think it's crazy that people have this kind of instinct, and logically speaking, you might think it is a bit mad to give up your entire life, your reputation, your money, to create something that might possibly work and has a 75% chance of failing, and yet people do it every day. And I think it is fantastic that humans have this spirit within them, this new drive to learn new things and to create new things. And when we've got these concepts around the way in which individuals are able to discover those things. So Israel Kirzner is one of my favorite economists, and he said that human action is itself discovery, that it's an act of discovery in which resources are deployed to achieve an objective, and it represents the realization that before that discovery, the relevant resources had been undervalued. So the full potential of these resources that the entrepreneur has now discovered had up until now not been understood. And thus this act of discovery, this every human action represents the discovery of hitherto unsuspected value in hitherto undervalued resources. So entrepreneurs themselves find something, they find value in these resources that hasn't yet been understood. And they have this wonderful drive that drives them to actually create those things. And I think this is fantastic. And when we're thinking about this, you know, within the wider context of entrepreneurial spirit itself, we've got, I mean, Howard Roark is a character in one of Ayn Rand's novels. Howard Roark is an architect, and his unwillingness to think the way of company men is what makes him the quintessential entrepreneur. It's in one of the most poignant scenes in The Fountainhead that he actually says that, you know, one of his friends who is unable to do those things that he wants to do, his plight is he can't do the work that he wants to do. And, you know, not being allowed to get this thing out of him, this drive, is crushing. It crushes him. And it sort of causes an ache in this particular individual himself, because he knows that the basic need of the creator is independence, that individuals, this entrepreneurial spirit actually comes as a result of this freedom, and they have to be free. The reasoning mind, the creator, has to be free in order to create these wonderful things. So this is one of the quotes from Howard Roark. He said, "The basic need of the creator is independence. The reasoning mind cannot work under any form of compulsion. It cannot be curbed, sacrificed, or subordinated to any consideration whatsoever. It demands total independence in function and in motive." And this is exactly why Mum's calling. This is exactly why the free market economy is far superior to any other economic system, because it allows individuals the freedom to pursue their happiness, the freedom to pursue their love, the freedom to pursue these kind of entrepreneurial spirits inside of them that allows them this drive to create those things. And you know, the reason why capitalism, the free market, I mean, who knows where the term capitalism has actually comes from? Does anyone know who coined that term? Sorry?
Karl Marx?
Yes, Karl Marx. So Karl Marx coined the term capitalism. And that's why I tend to prefer to use the term the free market, because I think that, or a market economy, because I think that more accurately describes what we're talking about when we're talking about capitalism. And of course, technically speaking, socialism can be capitalism, because if they've got capital. But anyway, the term capitalism tends to be very politically charged. What I mean by this is voluntary exchange. It's a transaction where goods or services are traded freely. There is no coercive or restrictive force involved in the transaction. So both parties want to make the exchange, and both parties will benefit from the trade. When I go to Starbucks and order myself a salted caramelized latte before I go to the office, it is entirely my choice. I entirely choose to spend a whopping £6, it's very expensive, on a salted caramelized latte because I choose to, and it's my prerogative, my right to choose to do that with my own money. So voluntary exchange is the basis of a free market economy. So the reason why I'm making this argument to all of you very intelligent people that already understand this is that when we break it down in this way, whenever we're telling people or explaining to people what we actually mean by capitalism, what we actually mean by the free market, it's not exploitative. It doesn't cause crazy amounts of instability, and in some ways instability causes innovation, so in some ways it's a good thing. And you know, it doesn't exploit people and cause people to be selfish. Instead, what we're talking about is the most moral system because it is based on consent. It's based on consent between different parties to mutually exchange. Now, unfortunately, as you are all very aware, not everyone agrees. There are some very, very silly people out there that don't agree. The Oxford English Dictionary defines socialism as a political and economic theory of social organisation that advocates that the means of production, distribution and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Now, when they say community as a whole, we all know what that really means. They mean a government, they mean a state, they mean a coercive state that controls the means of production, that controls the productive parts of the economy. And so when we're talking about full socialism, that is really what that means. And when we're talking about the community as a whole, it usually does mean some kind of governmental structure as well. And this coercion causes a lack of love. We saw in the Soviet Union, we saw in Venezuela, we saw in many authoritarian socialist countries that actually this kind of perspective, this kind of complete blanket approach to coercion effectively crushes that entrepreneurial spirit. And under socialism, the entrepreneur is not rewarded for their love. They love something, they want to create something, they want to pursue something, and they're not rewarded for that. They're often unable to do that. In more extreme cases in the Soviet Union, the kulaks or the sort of entrepreneurial ex-peasants that wanted to create these wonderful things and actually create a surplus of their product, oftentimes they were faced with death, murder by the state, and so they burned their cattle and they burned their surplus grain because they were so afraid. I think this is a very great example of this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and this drive for freedom is completely crushed by the state, effectively. And we know that things like subsistence farming then occur in those kind of economies. Effectively, it means that there is little, if any, surplus for sale, because again, they're not rewarded for that, or indeed they could be threatened with murder as a result of it. And this collectivization that we saw in the Soviet Union specifically resulted in a dramatic fall in agricultural productivity, and subsequently those unprecedented famines, which costed about 6 million-ish, approximately, lives, depending on who you ask and depending on the stats. Again, we won't really know because they didn't really have those many records. Now, this fall in output, in turn, undermined any of those attempts to import the necessary industrial capital to actually advance their economy as well. And GDP stagnated even after the first 5-year plan, which was not fulfilled. Now, I am half Egyptian, in case you couldn't tell by my surname. And that's a place that was effectively decimated by socialism. It causes this loss of advancement, it causes this loss of hope, loss of love, and it means that under a kind of socialist economy, depending on the variation, you wouldn't have a Steve Jobs or a Steve Wozniak or a Howard Schultz who are sort of creating these wonderful things. Instead, that is entirely crushed, and it means that there isn't that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that is allowed in those systems. You wouldn't have a Steve Jobs staying up until 4 or 5 in the morning thinking about this potential product. It just wouldn't happen because it's not allowed to happen effectively. And it crushes that drive, that love, that hope for something better. In a socialist economic system, there is no incentive to pursue entrepreneurial love. That's entirely taken away. And so innovation is also stifled. I don't know if we did figure out the sound did work. So I'm just going to play a 2-minute video. I'm sure many of you have already seen this. Milton Friedman talking about Leonard Read's iPencil. It was an essay that he wrote, and I just think he explains it much better than I ever can. So I'm going to play this. Advertisements. Capitalism. And another ad. Well, there you go. I think iPencil is one of the best explanations for this argument. Okay.
The basic principles underlying the free market, as Adam Smith taught them to his students in this university, are really very simple. Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all. The wood from which it's made, for all I know, comes from a tree that was cut down in the state of Washington. To cut down that tree, it took a saw. To make the saw, it took steel. To make the steel, it took iron ore. This black center, we call it lead, but it's really graphite, compressed graphite. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it comes from some mines in South America. This red top up here, the eraser, bit of rubber, probably comes from Malaya, where the rubber tree isn't even native. It was imported from South America by some businessmen with the help of the British government. This brass ferrule, I haven't the slightest idea where it came from, or the yellow paint, or the paint that made the black lines, or the glue that holds it together. Literally thousands of people cooperated to make this pencil. People who don't speak the same language, who practice different religions, who might hate one another if they ever met. When you go down to the store and buy this pencil, you are in effect trading a few minutes of your time for a few seconds of the time of all those thousands of people. What brought them together and induced them to cooperate to make this pencil? There was no commissar sending out orders from some central office. It was the magic of the price system, the impersonal operation of prices that brought them together and got them to cooperate to make this pencil so that you could have it for a trifling sum. That is why the operation of the free market is so essential, not only to promote productive efficiency, but even more, to foster harmony and peace among the peoples of the world.
Isn't he just amazing? I feel like Milton Friedman's voice is so calming as well. Anyway, so I think that's a fantastic example of, an explanation of the free market itself. I'm just going to read a quote from then. It reads, I pencil, the original essay. The lesson I have to teach is this. Leave all creative energies uninhibited. Merely organise society to act in harmony with this lesson. Let society's legal apparatus remove all obstacles the best that it can. Permit these creative know-hows freely to flow. Have faith that free men and free women will respond to the invisible hand. This faith will be confirmed. I pencil. Seemingly simple though I am, offer the miracle of my creation as testimony that this is a practical faith, as practical as the sun, the rain, a cedar tree, and the good earth. So I think that's a very good explanation of the way in which individuals are able to create these kind of things. And again, I have no idea how a pencil is actually really made. The point is, I don't have to, because there are millions of people out there that create it for me. And what compels them to create it, what compels individuals to create these products is not some commissar in the government. It's not some world government ordering all of those thousands of people to create those things. It is the magic of the free market. Now, as I said before, not everybody agrees with this, and unfortunately, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Not everybody agrees with this, and we seem to be losing the intellectual battle amongst young people. Now, this is why organisations like Students for Liberty are so important, and I think do fantastic work in that way. And unfortunately, we are still losing the intellectual battle amongst many young people in Western countries. Where I'm from in the UK, 53% of 18 to 34-year-olds believe that socialism is the ideal economic system. What have we done wrong? Why have we failed these people? Why are these people still believing these ideas? And I do really think it's about these moral arguments. People hear socialism and they think, oh, it's so nice, so lovely. They definitely have the monopoly over compassion. And I say, we've got to start making the moral, the just argument for capitalism, for the free market. This is polling from the Fraser Institute. Well, it was from Lega, but it was commissioned by the Fraser Institute. And it shows the way in which these different countries have actually encompassed these ideas. Now, I'm not sure what it's like in Spain. I think that young people tend to be a little bit more switched on than in the countries that I've got up there. But clearly, there are many people that still believe that socialism is ideal. And I think this is a failure partly of the freedom movement. We've not been making these arguments well enough to the majority of those people. Who here is on TikTok? I love TikTok. Oh, not that many. Okay, interesting. I love TikTok.
Yes, we do.
I think TikTok's great. It is also run by the Chinese government. But we can forget about that for a moment. I love TikTok. I spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours scrolling on TikTok. Fully admit that. A very busy woman, but much of that time is taken up by the Chinese app TikTok. And I love it. It's great. The algorithm captures you in your mind. Everyone knows. Hands up who said they were on TikTok? So you all know that your For You page is so specific to you, right? It's brilliant. The algorithms are amazing. But what this does also mean is that on social media, and not just TikTok, but other social medias, if you support these ideas or you seem to like these compassionate ideas of socialism, you get spat back at you these exact videos. You don't see any alternative. All you see is that hashtag things I like to do in my communist commune, hashtag capitalism is bad, standard of living, oh my God, so bad. Like, you get this stuff, and it means that young people are being fed these ideas continuously. And that's why I think it's so important that all of you, the next generation of thinkers, are able to combat these arguments both in online spaces and in your everyday lives as well. So join this fight for freedom. You don't have to all go and become policymakers and go and work in the government, but what I do want is for all of you to go away from today and go away from these conferences and, you know, think about the way in which you make these arguments to everyday people, whether that be your friends or your family or your colleagues. You know, we need people that understand these arguments. We need free market doctors, we need free market lawyers, we need people across society in both public institutions and in private business to understand these arguments and make them whenever they arise. Because otherwise, unfortunately, we are still losing this intellectual battle, and we're going to continue to lose unless we're able to make these arguments in everyday life. And that's why it's so wonderful to see organisations like Students for Liberty making those arguments in a grassroots way, because it means that young people like yourselves are all equipped with these arguments and equipped to make them wherever you encounter the wrong type of arguments. So that's me done. I am happy to have open this up to a conversation. My job is, as I'm sure was probably said in the intro, although I didn't understand it because it was in Spanish, I work in communications. So my job is effectively to take what academics say and try and help the everyday person understand what that research actually means. And so, you know, whilst most of the talks you've had today and yesterday have been by academics or politicians, I'm here to talk about how, you know, the comms problem. How are we communicating these ideas to people? So does anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments? I'm going to sit down now. No questions, no comments, no thoughts. Go on.
My first question will probably what is the problem of the liberalism in terms of communication? What is the main problem of us?
I think it's this this idea that the left have this monopoly on compassion, that actually, you know, when you talk to people on the left, and especially, you know, leftist politicians will use this all the time, they'll say, you know, I think that, you know, how dare you be so uncompassionate? How dare you, capitalist, greedy pig, be so uncompassionate? You know, I care about people because I want them to have free stuff. I want them to have nice stuff, and I want the government to provide that for them. Actually, when you're making those particular arguments, it sounds great, and any normal person, imagine explaining that to a child. If I said to my 9-year-old sister, would you like a society in which the government provides everything for you and you never have to worry? Or would you rather a society in which you have to take personal responsibility? She'd probably pick the former. And it's this kind of simple-minded perspective on these arguments that we have to decipher. And I think from a comms perspective, it's about making the moral argument for free markets, for voluntary exchange, using this word consent, that, you know, free market capitalism is about consent between individuals making voluntary exchanges, and that's what creates all these wonderful things. Unfortunately, we can use the consequentialist arguments, we can use historic arguments, we can say, well, socialism failed, look at it across the world, hello, look at history, and they will still come and say to you, that wasn't real socialism. So, you know, as much as I would love to make those arguments to every single one of you and talk about the fantastic ways in which free market capitalism has lifted millions of people out of poverty, actually, those arguments don't tend to land, and we've got to start making the moral arguments for capitalism.
You are against tobacco. they say in the interaction or something like that?
Oh no, I do a little bit of work. So my most recent paper, actually the first paper I published when I joined the IEA, was on tobacco harm reduction. So effectively looking at countries like Sweden that have achieved a smoke-free society. Do you guys know what's going on in the UK at the moment? We've just got a bill that's going through Parliament that is going to ban all tobacco products for the next generation. It is crazy. It's called the Tobacco and Vapes Bill. It was an idea that was floated by the New Zealand government, although this week they've just said that it's not happening anymore. Crazy. So now the UK is standing alone on this. They are looking at legislation to completely ban the age of sale of tobacco for anybody that was born after 2009. So anybody that turns 18, 19, 20 in the next few years will not ever be able to legally buy tobacco. Now there are some companies that are actually saying this goes against age discrimination law, because effectively what you'd have is a 41-year-old that legally can buy tobacco and a 40-year-old that can't legally buy tobacco. So again, that kind of goes into this arguments around age discrimination. And in my view, it's treating the adults of the future as though they'll be children forever. So the paper that I did is called, that I co-wrote with my colleague Christopher Snowdon. I'm sure many of you guys will have heard of him. He's big on the lifestyle stuff. It effectively looked at the disposable vapes argument, looking at the way in which harm reduction can occur, not by banning tobacco, but by allowing adults to make informed choices. Sweden is, I think, the best example. They've effectively achieved a smoke-free society. Less than 5% of the population smoke, and they've done that not by taking away those choices, but adults being free to choose. And we're already seeing smoking rates decline globally, not because of governments banning things or taxing them or introducing plain packaging, but actually because of these new technological advancements that have allowed things like vapes, e-cigarettes, disposable vapes, snus, nicotine pouches, these products. And when adults are able to choose that, we actually see smoking rates decline. I know that was a bit of a what's the word? Digression from what I was saying, but it answers your question. Any other thoughts or comments? Yes.
Very interesting talk about capitalism and entrepreneurship, but in talk about morality, I'm a bit surprised that you haven't mentioned two words: equality and justice. You have said it,
I said the word just. Well, not necessarily justice, but just. Yeah, I think. So you're right, and I do think this is again part of the leftist sort of this idea that the left have this monopoly on compassion. This idea that actually equality is somehow an ideal, and I do think this is more so an ideological perspective. So you are right, I probably should have mentioned the word equality. I think the reason why that word is such a buzzword for the left, this idea that we're going to all somehow achieve an equal society, that equality is somehow a good thing, is again an argument that we've not been very successful at arguing against. We've got to make the argument for a dynamic economy, an economy in which every individual is free to pursue their interests, and that sometimes those interests have different outcomes, and that's a good thing. We have variety, and I think that we often don't make those arguments enough, so thank you for that. Any other comments or thoughts? Yes?
So have you been following Javier Milei in Argentina?
I have indeed.
That's an example of somebody who's actually pretty hardcore libertarian and yet with a tremendous amount of success in a very large country. So is there anything we can learn from that?
Yeah, I definitely think, I think Argentina is one of the, whoever their free market think tank is over there, I want to learn from their comms team, because they've done a very, very good job. And, young people have been making these arguments for free markets, and I think that that's not something we've seen in any other country really at all. And I am really concerned by the way in which social media impacts, especially young people in the West, and we see consistently the way in which voting patterns occur. I'm not sure what it's like in Spain, but in the US and in the UK, young people vote left and young people argue for more government, and that's just generally how it seems to be working. Sure. I think that the case of Argentina, Javier Milei, he is something else. I do think that have you all seen that video of him ripping down government departments, saying "God, the Ministry for Women, God"? I'm like, slay. But I do also think that I worry, and maybe this is coming from a Brit, the Liz Truss scenario. What happened with her? I was so excited by the prospect of a free market libertarian in number 10. Finally, somebody that's going to solve all of our problems. And the Whitehall machine, the bureaucracy, didn't allow her to make those reforms. The markets reacted very badly to her effectively unfunded tax cuts, and she was gone within 44 days. Liz Truss is the shortest serving Prime Minister in the UK. And I mean, it's nice that people don't tend to talk about it. I mean, I was expecting somebody to at least say to me, oh, you're great. Well, look what happened to you guys. You really messed up. It's true. It was crazy. And I'm worried. I hope that doesn't happen in Argentina. You have to be very careful. And I've changed my perspective on some of this stuff. I used to be a bit more of a radical in this respect. I used to think as soon as we get a libertarian number 10, they've got to slash taxes, slash spending on day one. I actually think that more gradual reform is probably politically more possible, and also will work better and result in more long-term sustainable shortening of the state. Any other thoughts? What do you think of Malay?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll have to see what he actually does when he's in office. I also think that I think it works a little bit differently in Argentina, where he has a 4-year term, and I'm not sure it's as easy to kick him out until those 4 years. It's a little bit more like the United States, if I understood correctly.
Yeah.
So that might be a little bit of a difference there. Maybe he'll get more of a chance.
That's also very true.
I think that he has been very honest. I used to live in Argentina a few years ago. It was started this seventh generation of leftists. You know, all that postmodernism that has gone very bad.
The Frankfurt School.
All that kind of postmodernist leftists. And I think that besides the good marketing, he has been very honest, because he said things won't get better one day to other. It is a process. And I think that is very good, because at least someone said that it won't change this way. It has to be a step-by-step process. And is the thing that I like most.
Yeah, I think also just from a communications perspective, he has done that. He's communicated these ideas.
True.
Exactly, yeah, and I do think that, I think on the libertarian side and the free market side, the stats, the numbers are on our side. I mean, we know that, for example, as governments hold back, as they remove regulation and red tape, that businesses are allowed to flourish. The evidence is all there, but it's really a communication problem, and we need to communicate to the public so that also politicians are able to also more easily make those arguments as well. I mean, again, this is maybe something I wouldn't have said as an anarchist when I was 17, but I do feel for politicians, especially those on the free market side, that really they have to choose between being unelected and being able to make those arguments within that time. And as much as people like Liz Truss, had the arguments on her side, I think we underestimate how big government is at the moment, and how difficult it is to shift the Overton window and shift those arguments. And so I think it's up to us at the grassroots to make those arguments and convince people.
Well, there is another point. The Partido Justicialista, that the party that he was against, they did a very bad choice in order to pick the future president, Massa. He was already the economics minister, so he has done a very bad performance as a minister, and they choose them as a
Okay, last question.
Yeah, last question.
No, I was just going to comment.
Oh, yes.
No, that's okay. I think that Javier Milei's policy has a chance of surviving, just because we have already had gradualism with Macri.
True.
And
Didn't work. All talk, no action.
didn't work at all. And the country is so bad economically right now that I think that. Yeah.
What do you think of dollarization? What do you think of dollarization? Do you think it'll work?
Honestly, I'm hoping it will, because our currency is just really bad right now. I think that I think dollarization is already a reality
Mm.
in Argentina.
Yeah.
We all save money in dollars and not in pesos.
Yeah, I remember I spoke to Axel Kaiser Axel, is that his name? He was saying that, you know, dollarization has effectively already happened because people think about exchange in dollars anyway.
And I think it's happening like that, like years and years. Like my grandparents already saved money in dollars, so
The only thing, maybe I need maybe I need an economist to explain this to me. What about like government, because obviously the government wouldn't have any control of the money supply and the central bank wouldn't have any control of the money supply. So I'm just interested in how that would work in terms of like government debt. They wouldn't be able to like do like quantitative easing. They wouldn't be able to control the supply at all. So I'd be interested. Anyway, I think we have run out of time now, haven't we? We can talk about this forever.
No, unfortunately, we have run out of time. But thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Y por favor, un aplauso.
Thank you.
Cheers.